Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Midwatch. As usual, I just want to say that this podcast is brought to you by Bravo Zulu Co. Bravo Zulu Co. is a naval-based clothing company, but we're also more than that. We like to promote positive thinking, dedication, and just overall doing good in anything that you do in your life and going out every day and earning that BZ. On this week's podcast, we have a special guest by the name of Daniel Robert. He's been a close friend of mine for the past couple of years, and he is also a veteran to the Afghanistan war. In this podcast, he shares a little bit about his personal life, and he also goes into a couple of battle stories in Afghanistan. Hopefully you guys get a lot of information from this and a new appreciation for some of the men and women who have fought for us overseas. And without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy. All right, and we are live for the fourth episode, I believe, of the Midwatch. And we're here with Daniel Robert, or Petty Officer Robert, some may know him as. How you doing, bud?
Good, how are you?
Not too bad. So, for those of you listening, me and Dan have been pretty good friends for the past probably a little over 2 years. Or actually it's actually exactly 2 years. Exactly 2 years, almost to the day, actually. I checked into Kings Bay, my first command as a corpsman, in April 2016, and Dan was my sponsor. And then after that, we continued to work together a little bit, and that's kind of where the relationship came from. Now we have both moved on from Kings Bay, and we're at different duty stations, but obviously the relationship's still there. That's something that's nice about the Navy. So how you doing, Dan? I know we pretty much talk every day still, but
Yeah, so I'm doing pretty good, man.
So one of the things I want to do with this podcast is obviously, talk to people and better my personal communication skills. That's kind of the selfish reason I wanted to start a podcast. But the main true reason I want to start it is to give a platform for anyone to come on to kind of share their story, but obviously veterans and service members especially is what is truly important to me. And nowadays with technology, we don't need the History Channel, the Discovery Channel to do these documentaries and air them. I can call you up on the computer and hit the record button, and I can do my own work. So I kind of wanted to take that the ease that technology gives me to kind of do that myself and hopefully document some of these stories that may never be heard, but it's easy nowadays to document everything that we possibly can. So I don't want to dive right into it, but we can kind of start off. Like, where do you come from? What was your high school like? Did you play sports? And kind of what brought you to the Navy opposed to any other branch? So we'll kind of, like I said, we'll just kind of start from there. So where did you grow up? Or where are you from originally?
I grew up in like the Palm Bay, Melbourne area in Florida. A lot of people don't know where that's at, but it's in Brevard County. It's just south of like Cocoa Beach and all that good stuff.
So that's the East Coast, right?
Yeah, it's on the East Coast between Jacksonville and Miami.
So is it by like St. Augustine or?
It's further south than that.
South?
It's close to like Cape Canaveral and everything.
Oh, okay, all right.
So we used to be able to watch like the shuttles and stuff taking off.
Mm-hmm.
So that was always pretty cool. Kind of took it for granted when you were a kid.
Right.
It's just something that we saw. We just walk outside and see the shuttle launch, but
That's pretty cool. Did you ever do like?
Yeah.
I'm assuming you had like a lot of like class trips and stuff there, or?
No, actually, I've actually never been to the Space Center, even though it's like right there.
Oh wow! I figured like your elementary school or high school or something would have done like some sort of trip there.
Nah, we just watched it. We just walk outside, so you really didn't need to go there, really.
Did the what was that? The space shuttle that we lost, the Discovery? Did that come out of there, or was that in Houston? There was
there was two. There was the Challenger. That one exploded on takeoff.
Right.
That one was launched out of there, but that was before I was born.
Oh.
And then there was another one that broke up on re-entry. That was over in Texas.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was like early 2000s, I remember. But
Yeah.
okay, all right.
So yeah, that was over Texas.
Okay, all right. So did you play any? I mean, obviously, you're a pretty big guy. Did you play any kind of sports in high school or?
Yeah, I played football. I played offensive line and a little bit of tight end, but then nothing really panned out after high school.
And did you did you attend any college, or did you just kind of go right into the military?
No, so I got a couple of letters from different like Division 2 and 3 and stuff like that, but like I said, nothing ever panned out with that. So when I graduated high school, I just started working. I did a whole bunch of different jobs.
That's a pretty common, I feel like, common thing for most. I mean, me myself, I kind of did the same thing after high school. I kind of bounce around, and then ended up just joining.
Yeah, I worked. I worked as like a lot porter for a little while, like driving cars around a car dealership. Construction. Worked at a computer company. Worked at an oil company for a little bit. What else did I do? And then I went to like the food service industry. And I was working 2 jobs doing that. And then I was like, man, this ain't working out.
So, I believe I'm assuming the reason that you joined the Navy was because of your dad, right? Is because
that's why I picked that branch. Really, my dad was in the Navy. He joined originally back during the Vietnam time, and he went originally to be a UDT or a frogman, what they're called SEALs now. But I guess he got frostbite in training, so they kicked him out of the program, and then he kind of got soured on the Navy because they just bounced him around the fleet undesignated.
So yeah, because that's originally where the SEALs came from, right? Was in Vietnam, and they were
I think it started in like World War II, but I'm not 100% sure. I have to look into their history a little bit.
Because UD was underwater demolition team, right? That's like what that acronym was for? So they would like blow up like bridges and like barriers and stuff like that. That was like their first like real mission, right?
I think that's how they originated. He didn't talk about it too much. Like I said, he wasn't very keen on the Navy. He felt like he kind of got screwed over a little bit.
I guess it's fair after if they just kind of bounce him around afterwards. It's kind of shitty.
Yeah, they're like, oh, sorry about the frostbite in your feet for making you PT in the snow and your skivvies in a shirt. There's like 4 of his dudes in his class that got frostbite, so they kicked him out of the program and then just said, have fun out there and sent him to some ship.
Actually,
so he hated it.
I just kind of put 2 and 2 together. The bathing suits that they issue at like the high school and stuff are called UDTs.
Yep.
I'm assuming that's where that name came from.
Yeah, because those were the guys that wore them their dive shorts.
I wonder what that acronym stands for now, since they're just shorts.
I think there's the nickname for them.
Underwater demolition trunks.
There you go. You blow them shits off.
So yeah, those are like the for the guys listening who may not know what they are. Those are like the traditional like they're essentially like I think they're like canvas, like the real short brown canvas shorts that like you may see in some movies and stuff. Those are the UDTs.
James Bond had a pair, didn't he?
Yeah, it's pretty similar, but yeah, he did. They're just real short shorts. I mean, they're bathing suits, but you can also wear them as like regular shorts, and SEAL still use them to this day, and EOD and stuff like that. They actually get issued them in schools. So, as weird as they look, they're actually pretty comfortable.
Yeah.
Okay, so when did you graduate high school? What year?
I graduated 2004.
2004. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you worked, bounced around jobs for about like 4 years. And then what year, you said 2008, right? You joined the Navy?
Yep, April 2008 is when I joined the Navy.
All right. So was there like was that something that you always knew you wanted to do? Or kind of like what, kind of talk to me about like the process that pretty much made you walk into the recruiter's office?
I actually talked to an Army recruiter like right after my senior year, and that never panned out. And I thought about maybe doing law enforcement or something like that. But I don't know, always something in that type of field. And then I considered doing like a paramedic, firefighter, something like that. Mm-hmm. And then, like I said, I wasn't making much money, and I was working 2 jobs. So I was like, man, I can't put myself through like paramedic school take time off of work. So I talked to my buddy who's a corpsman from my high school, my buddy Tyler, and he's told me it was pretty good. So I listened to him, and I went and talked to the recruiter, and I was like, this ought to work out.
So you always wanted to kind of be in the public service field, I guess. I guess would be a good word to use. They just
kind of like public service, I guess you can call it. Public servant, something like that.
Okay. So 2008, you walked to the recruiter's office, and then when did you ship out for boot camp?
2007 is when I kind of started it, and I did the DEP program. I think I did it for like 6 months just because I was waiting on a spot to open up for a school for corpsmen.
Right.
So April 2008 is when I actually ended up leaving, and then I went to boot camp.
Okay. I was a senior in high school.
Nice.
I think. Yeah, 2008. Yeah, I graduated 2008. All right. So, so you go to boot camp. You're in Great Lakes, right? I'm assuming. Obviously, that's the only one.
Yep. I'm not that old, man.
So let's see. April. So you graduate boot camp around like June-ish.
Yeah, it was June.
June.
'Cause I remember my first weekend over at core school that I got there was 4th of July.
So one thing that a lot of the older corpsmen like Dan here likes to brag about to the newer corpsmen like myself is the original A school for corpsmen. A school is the school that you go to after boot camp, and that's the school where you learn your specific job in the Navy.
Yeah, it's where you learn your primary job.
The original core school was in Great Lakes, which was right across the street from boot camp. So a lot of them like to call that the real core school because obviously the newer core school where I go to is down in Texas. So I just wanted to put that out there. That Dan's a real corpsman. Mm-hmm. So what was core school like back then? Because I know it's a lot different now, and I'm actually pretty curious on like the differences.
Well, core school's been through a couple different like curriculums and stuff like that. Even my buddy that I was talking about that convinced me to join, when he went, they were trying out the self-paced, like online learning type of thing. So he breezed through it in like a month.
Oh, so it was just all.
And the fleet was kind of realizing like this isn't necessarily a good idea.
Well, I guess right around that time was like the big push into like Iraq and stuff, so they probably needed corpsmen, so they're probably just finding the fastest way.
They were streamlining them through there. They were pushing them all through. Because 2004 is when they did the big push for Iraq. That's when a lot of the big engagements were happening.
Right. All right. So was yours also that self-paced one, or no? Were you?
Nah, when I went there, it was just like a regular, typical Navy school, I guess you can call it. You show up and you dick around for a little while, like cleaning stuff up until you class up. And then once you class up, you go right into like basic fundamentals in the medical field.
Yeah, so
the different modules you test out.
Again, to give some context to his phrase, dicking around and cleaning up. On top of being sailors, the Navy likes to train us to be professional janitors as well. So if you're ever in a position where like you're waiting to class up to a certain school or things like that, which always ends up happening. Like I think in total, when I was in sub school is comprised of 4 different schools, and in between each school, I was on in a holding unit for at least a month at a time. But when you're in those holding units, there's really not much for you to do besides clean the same thing over and over again. So
they make you earn your paycheck.
Yes. So and even if you just swept those stairs and it's clean, you can just go sweep it again until it's 1600, and then you can go home.
And back then, we actually looked like janitors because we still had the old Navy utilities. It was the blue dicky pants and like the denim colored shirt.
We didn't have the camis yet.
Nope.
So, all right. So how long was core school back then?
I was there for about 4 months.
Oh, okay, so it's about
including the class up time. I think that was like 2 or 3 weeks.
All right. So, let's see. That's getting close to the end of the year then, right? It's the end of 2008.
Yeah, I graduated October.
Okay. And then where did
I'm kind of glad I went because it gets cold in Chicago around that time.
I went to boot camp January 4th, and that was terrible. Yeah, that was.
Especially for me, because I'm from Florida, so that was my first winter, like not in Florida, so that's pretty miserable.
I'll never
Even in October.
I'll never forget my my RDC, the guy that I had on a couple of podcasts ago. He first day we got to our barrack, we were actually the test division for these things called P days. I think they had them, like they've always had P days, but just the way that they did them, they wanted to kind of change it up to where we didn't get our RDCs right away. So what would happen is the first week, like when we got there, again, we were the test division for it, me or our division and our brother div. So we got there, and then we had what were they called? Not influencers, mediators. They were RDCs, but they couldn't do like RDC stuff to us yet. So their main job was like that first week they would take us. I mean, it was still like structured like boot camp, like marching everywhere, all that, but they really couldn't,
there's no instructing going on or anything.
Right, and or like they couldn't like punish you with PT and stuff like that. But what they did was they were that first week you were there, you got all your medical stuff done, all your billion shots, you did all your stenciling, you did all the issuing, and then after the first week, your RDCs would come pick you up from them, and then so as soon as your RDCs got you, all that the logistics stuff was out of the way, so they could get like right to training. And I actually think they ended up like keeping that format.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, so the RDC.
They did something similar like that to us. They called it P days and everything, but it was not as structured as what you're saying. We went and got like our PT uniform and like maybe one or two other items, but I mean, there was a lot of sitting around.
Yeah. All right, so I forgot why we got off track. Oh, we were talking about Groton, or we were talking about Great Lakes in the winter. So you graduate core school late 2008, and then where did you end up going for your first duty station?
Well, from there I went to Field Med down in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, the Marine base down here.
Okay.
So Field Medical Training Battalion is what it was called then. I don't know. It's probably got a different name now.
And can you kind of, I mean, I kind of know what it is, but I mean, obviously I've never been to it. I know a lot of people like yourself who have been to it. But, like kind of like go into like a little bit like what that is and why. I mean, obviously that's a Marine base, and why like corpsmen would actually have to go to that school.
Yeah, this confuses a lot of people, including people in the Navy. Like a lot of people don't even know that there's Navy personnel that get stationed with the Marine Corps units. But a lot of people don't know, or they don't like to admit that especially the Marines, they don't like to admit that the Marine Corps is actually a department of the Navy. So in order to, instead of having like double medical and things like that, they use Navy corpsmen for the Marine units, for their medical personnel, and Marine doctors and nurses and everything, or Navy doctors and nurses. So we kind of just get chopped over to those dudes. But Field Med, when you go there, it's kind of a crash course into Marine Corps culture, rank structure, their ethos, all that good stuff, their PT, and then the crash course into tactical combat casualty care and how to do some battlefield life-saving skills.
So it's essentially like I'm not going to say Marine boot camp, but it's kind of just the basics on the Marine Corps and a lot of PT, pretty much essentially.
Yeah.
Right.
It's 2 months long, and they just kind of get you sort of used to what it's going to be like if you go to a Marine unit, because it's way different than the Navy.
Right. So, so kind of like to add on to what you're saying about, so like you said, like not a lot of people understand that the Marines technically aren't like their own branch. I guess they are their own branch, but they're not their own department. If you actually look on like the seal, like the Air Force, Army, and Navy says Department of Defense, United States Navy, United States Army, United States Air Force. But if you actually look at the Marine one, it says Department of the Navy, United States Marines. And like you said, that a lot of people kind of don't understand that, but and then they look at us as corpsmen. And again, corpsmen, that's also like another weird thing. Like we're not technically a rate either. We're
we're a corps.
A corps, so we're kind of like the Marine Corps, but we're corpsmen.
And the hospital corps.
We're a hospital corps. There you go. So and I mean, before I became a corpsman, I was in the Navy for almost 4 years. I mean, not that long of a time, but it was very confusing to me. And like you said, like I was in the Navy for a while, and I had a corpsman on my first boat, and I still like didn't really understand that. And corpsman is pretty much the only rate. Well, RPs also religious personnel that can go to FMTB, right? It's just corpsmen and RPs.
On the enlisted side, we have some personnel specialists and everything too that kind of come over here. There's a few that like help out with that stuff, but not a whole lot of Navy jobs, but primarily corpsmen and RPs.
Right. And then what?
And then, also the chaplains too, Navy chaplains.
And it's such a big part of corpsman history is because down in Fort Sam Houston, where I went to Corps school, and I actually feel really bad that I can't remember the names, but the two barracks that we stayed in, oh my god, I feel terrible right now. One of them was named after the first female corpsman that died in Iraq, and then the other one was named after like another just another corpsman. I forget why they were significant. And then when you walk into the schoolhouse, there's a ginormous wall of pictures, and they have it's a picture of every corpsman that died like in combat overseas and stuff. And it's it was a big eye opener for me because, like I said, coming from the sub force, a corpsman to me was just the guy at the clinic that wouldn't see me for sick call or something, and then or who just sat behind the desk and did nothing all day. But then I got to Corps school and I kind of saw that what the corpsman rating really was, and there's a lot of history there, which is really cool. And I kind of
well, corpsmen are the most decorated rate in the Navy,
right?
As far as awards go.
We have, was it 21 Medal of Honors, I believe, or 22? Because didn't one just get one recently?
Not 100% sure. Yeah. The one that got recently from the Navy, I believe, was a Navy SEAL. But back in the day, the SEALs they weren't their own rating. Yep. They used to have to go be a job first, go to your A school, and then from there, then you go to BUDS, and then you become a SEAL.
Right.
But
that's not even. I mean, I wouldn't even say back in the day, because that ended in like 2006 or because actually
so fairly recently.
If you
Lone Survivor, I was like that.
I was just about to say that if you look at the ending credits of Lone Survivor, like when they name everyone, it's all like HM1 or there's a lot of like sonar or STS, and then like it was all different rates, but they were all SEALs because, like you said, that was more of a like a secondary school that you went to. Now, obviously, it's its own rate. Like you can come into the Navy as a SEAL, but it wasn't always like that. There's a lot of like confusing things like that. Like
they've restructured stuff like that so many times.
Yeah, it's just it's funny how like just people have such a conception of how it is, and then like it's like just totally different than what like the common consensus is.
Oh yeah, it's confusing even for people that are in. I mean, I've been in for a while; they still don't fully understand it. But and then as soon as you get a grasp of it, they change it. So
yeah, that's for sure. All right, so you get to you finish field med. So like, again, it's just a crash course into Marine culture, and
how to wear their uniforms and all that good stuff.
And the reason that we have to do that is, well, I shouldn't say we because I haven't been, but the reason most corpsmen have to do that is because like Dan said, one of our most common commands is attached to the Marines. So all right, so let's get back to your career. So you go to FMTB, and how long is that?
It's 2 months long.
2 months.
So it wasn't too bad.
All right, so you go from A school to FMTB, and then where do you go next?
And then from there, my first duty station was a submarine base, Groton, Connecticut. I was at the clinic there.
All right. That was actually my first duty station also, which is
Oh,
pretty.
looky there.
What you? So you were there 2009.
Yeah, early 2009 till early 2011.
Okay, so you left. I got there 2012. Okay. All right. So how was your time there? So you just worked in the clinic, you said, right? What did you do in the clinic?
So when I first got there, I was all, hoorah moto, because I just came from field med, and then they stuck me in medical records.
The least moto spot.
I was like, man, I can't wait to get there and learn how to do some medicine, do some sick calls, see some patients, and I got put right into admin, which happens to a lot of people, which kind of sucks, but I mean, it's an important part of the job too. So I learned a lot about medical records, and it's in every advancement exam and all that good stuff. So it wasn't terrible, but as soon as I got a chance to, I put in a request to move departments.
And where did you request to go?
I went over to undersea medicine,
Hooyah.
and then I worked sick call for a little while, and then got my clinical skills up there, learning from a bunch of the independent duty corpsmen and the different undersea medical officers, things like that. So it's pretty good to learn from those guys.
So were you?
I moved over to physical examinations department after that, so I learned that aspect of it.
So right around, I feel like that would have been a very interesting time to be a corpsman, like 2008, 2009. Did you run into a lot of guys? So if you think normal tours are like 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
So 3 years before 2008 was like 2004, 2005, where every corpsman went to Marines right out of A school. So around the time that you got the Groton would be the same time some of those guys were going to shore duty. Did you run into anyone like at Groton, fresh off the battlefield that kind of inspired you or motivated you or anything like that?
Oh yeah, there's a whole bunch of dudes that were there that had been with the Marines, been to Iraq. Some have been to Afghanistan, but most of the push was through Iraq at that time. But around the time I came in, it was kind of over for the most part. And then they shifted their focus to Afghanistan mainly. So a lot of the corpsmen there were on their shore command rotation.
So you're surrounded by like a lot of experience for battlefield medicine and stuff like that.
Yeah, a whole bunch of dudes with their FMF or their Fleet Marine Force pins and combat action. It's all a bunch of stuff going on. A lot of them been blown up before, hitting IEDs and Humvees, because that's what they rolled around in back then. So listen to their stories, and I was like, man, I want to go do that.
So the first time you got the chance, I'm assuming you picked orders to go with the Marines.
There was one chance I was supposed to go on a deployment to Afghanistan while I was there, but I was on leave, so they gave it to somebody else.
Oh, like an IA?
So I came back from leave, and they're like, oh man, you almost got picked to deploy. I was like, man.
So
I missed it.
That's another thing I kind of want to. So a lot of people like get that confused. Also, they think you're in the military and they think like you're just gone all the time. One of the very few nice things that the military does is we have something called a sea shore rotation. Did the Marines have the same thing? I'm assuming, or something similar.
No, they don't have anything like that. They have what they call their B billets, so it gives them a chance they can apply. Like, say you're a rifleman, or you're just a grunt, an infantry guy. Mm-hmm. You'll stay at an infantry unit or you'll bounce around from one to another, unless you pick a job like security forces, embassy duty, drill instructor, recruiting. You can work over at the School of Infantry as an instructor, things like that. But there's really no like shore rotation for those guys unless they pick that B billet.
Oh, okay. All right.
But it's kind of like it's not in their job scope.
Gotcha. All right. So for us Navy people, we have a seashore rotation. So, corpsman is actually one of the very few rates to where you can go to shore right out of school. 95% of the other jobs, you go to boot camp, A school, and then you go to a ship or a submarine. In my case,
Yeah.
And then you'll do your first sea tour, which is anywhere from 3 to 4 years based on your rate, what kind of platform you're on. There's a lot that goes into that. And then after that, you do your shore rotation, which again can anywhere be from 2 to 4 years, depending on your job or rate or your rank, even sometimes. Which kind of gives us a break, and because ships have a high op tempo, Marines obviously have a high op tempo, and an op tempo is essentially how much you go in and out or away from home. So
same thing with like the squadrons too, like what the Navy has.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because
like the air side of the house.
Right, because like they'll be most of the time they're stationed at like an airfield, but I mean they'll go out on like the carriers and stuff like that. Whenever the carriers go out, the squadron will fly onto the carrier and they'll go on deployment with them, or they'll just because a lot of squadrons can actually get stationed in like Iraq and stuff, right? Like on the airfields out there.
Yeah, it all depends. Like wherever they need them, they'll task them like, "Hey, we need you at this NATO base," or "Hey, we need you forward deployed to Afghanistan," or wherever the case may be. Germany, they go there too sometimes, right. Or ships. It depends.
Right. So pretty much what I was getting at with that is that's just a common misconception that the general public have, is that you're in the military, you're just always on deployment or always away from home. When you're operational,
nice.
When you're operational, that's the case a lot of the times. But when you're on your shore duty, most of it is a 9 to 5 for a lack, or an 8 to 4 or 7 to 4.
Yeah. It's more regular working hours.
Right. So it's not always bad. But at the clinic, obviously your first tour out of school was one of those 7 to 4 jobs, and then you were there for 2 years or 3 years?
Yeah, I was there for 2 years.
2 years, okay. Mm-hmm. And then you picked orders to go with the Marines, right?
Yep. I picked orders to go to 2nd Marine Division in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina.
And you didn't have to obviously you didn't have to go to FMTB, right? Because you already went through that beforehand. Mm-hmm. So talk to me a little bit about that. I still don't understand like the numbers to this day, like the 2nd Division, 3rd Battalion, or can you like? Yeah. How does that?
That part's confusing to a lot of people.
How is that broken down exactly?
Well, it's just it depends on the size. So the Marine Corps, it's not a huge branch, so they only have 3 divisions, or Marine divisions. They got one in California, they got one in North Carolina, and then they split up the other one between Hawaii and Japan. So, and it's like the Army, they have a bunch of divisions. It's just they have the numbers for it.
Right. So divisions is like the fleet, pack, like is equivalent to the Navy, like Atlantic Fleet, Pac Fleet, like 5th Fleet, 2nd Fleet. Okay. And so it goes division, and then what's regiment is next?
Mm-hmm. Well, it goes MEF, which is Marine Expeditionary Force, which kind of encompasses the Marine Division, which is all the infantry guys, and then you got the air side of the house. So I don't remember if it's the MAG or the MAW. I don't remember. Marine Air Group or Marine Air Wing. I forget the breakdown on their sizes. And then they also have like the logistics and everything. And in Lejeune, when it used to be, you just got orders. You just picked Marine Division orders. That means something in the infantry, whichever one you pick. So I picked 2nd, which was in North Carolina. And then when you check in, you go check in at the division surgeon's office to get your orders stamped and all that good stuff. And then they kind of had this big board with all the different units on there and however many people they had for each rank breakdown. And they kind of just looked at it and said, I think 1-6 needs a guy, so you're going to go to 1-6. So I didn't even know what unit I was going to, or even if I was going to go to an infantry battalion until I got there. But I knew I was going somewhere within the division. Okay.
So there's pretty much 3, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm kind of talking out of ignorance here, but there's pretty much three types of billets you can go with the Marines. You can either go the MAW, which is where you're attached to the like Marine pilots, the air wing, which again, not a lot of people know that, but the Marines actually have like a lot of pilots and planes. So you can be a
Yeah,
corpsman.
they consider that the air combat element, so the ace.
Okay. So you can be a corpsman for them. You can be a corpsman for something called MLG, right, which is the Marine Logistics Group.
That's what I don't know if they've changed the name, but yeah, basically the logistics side of the house.
Or you can go division, which is
They're
the cool place to go apparently, and that's where you're down with the riflemen and the stuff you see in the movies mainly.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff. You got that falls under the ground combat element. You have like the typical rifleman and like like you said, like the movies. And then you got the tanks. So you can go with those guys. You can go with the LAVs, the six-wheeled vehicles, the armored vehicles. They got those dudes. You got combat engineers, EOD, all those guys.
Is there still cavalry, or is that's an army thing?
That's Army, yeah.
Ah,
They still have the cavalry, but I forget what they're called now or what they even transformed it to. Because it was the cavalry, and then they changed it to the air cav in like Vietnam. So they traded in their horses for helicopters. But I think what they call cav now is like mechanized infantry, so it's like trucks and stuff. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's kind of what it morphed into.
all right. All right. So you check into there, and what was that experience like? Your first, your first Marine command. You previously, 2 years prior to that, you went to that FMTB, and kind of learned all about it. So how did you feel, finally getting to that first command that you really wanted to be at, essentially?
I was pretty excited, but I was kind of nervous too because I was like, I don't know what the hell this is going to be like. But I wanted to do something more than sit in a clinic or kind of float around in like a sick bay area or the medical department of a ship. So I always wanted to go around and be like a ground pounder and be a corpsman for those dudes. So when I got there, like I said, it was like, well, hopefully I get an infantry battalion. And then they're like, all right, you're going to 1-6, which is 1st Battalion, 6th Marines. And I was like, all right, cool. And then I checked in there, and they're like, all right, you're going to go check you into regiment, which is a step below that. And I was like, I hope I don't get stuck at the regimental aid station, just seeing patients there. So then they're like, all right, yeah, you're going to, or no, I didn't check into reg. Where did I go? So I checked into 1-6. I didn't want to get stuck at the battalion aid station, is what it was, where you kind of just see patients at the battalion level.
That's essentially the battalion aid station is essentially the Marine version of a clinic. I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's like their little medical department.
Okay. So if you got stuck there, you'd essentially be doing the same thing you did at Groton.
Pretty much, just in a different uniform, seeing Marines instead of submariners.
Okay. But
I mean, you support field operations every once in a while. You go sit down and be, but you don't really do the actual running and gunning.
So, luckily you didn't get stuck there. You got put right into the division, or is that the correct word to use? Or
so they put me in one of the companies.
for the companies, okay.
Yeah. So they were all in the field when I got there, so I started doing some of my check-in stuff, and then they all came back from the field, and I was with the Alpha Company 1-6.
All right, so that's another word that you hear a lot with Marines, is the field. Kind of go into like what that is a little bit.
The field could be anything from doing land navigation where you don't even have rifles, or essentially like camping with the military. But it can be anywhere from like a day or two to 30 days long for the field operations. It's basically just training in the field. Sometimes it's just a rifle range. You go shoot at stationary targets. Sometimes you actually run it and gun it. So you're with your guys and you do like an attack range on various levels.
But you're
basic infantry stuff.
You're pretty much playing soldier, right? Essentially, that's what you're kind of
pretty much
pretending they're acting like you're overseas. And
you go over different scenarios and you practice your various field or expeditionary skill sets. So you work on, like I said, land navigation's one of them. Working on patrolling, all kinds of different stuff.
But you also simulate the same conditions you'll have over there, correct? So you got no cabins, no showers, no
No, you just have whatever you carry out there.
Right. So you're sleeping on cots and using baby wipes to shower.
Yeah, there's no cots. It's just the ground.
Oh, okay.
If you're lucky, every once in a while they'll give you a tent you can use, like a 2-man tent. But for the most part, it's just, all right, we're going to walk out there, and you're going to bring everything that you need on you, and that's what you have.
And then you're just training how you fight, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And how often?
Depending on what the training schedule was.
So on ships, essentially, I mean, it's not the same thing, but we go underway for a couple weeks, and I mean, we're out there just doing circles, but we're doing fire drills and the type of stuff that we have to train on. So it's the same idea, just different concept, obviously, because
yeah.
What was your first field op like? Like what was kind of going through your head? Kind of like were you like, oh shit, like like what kind of was going through your head?
Yeah, it was kind of like that. So like I said, I checked in, and my Marines all came back from the field that I was going to be their corpsman. So they're like, all right, let's go meet the dudes. So they're all sitting on the wash rack. They're all miserable because they just got back, and it was March, so it was pretty hot in Lejeune. It was already muggy, and they had like a couple of heat cases coming back in, so they're all pissed off, ready to go home. And at the time, I was like a little chubby when I was wearing glasses. And I came walking out, and they're all looking at me, and they're like, hey, this is Doc Robert. He's going to be your new corpsman. And they all kind of just stared at me. And I was like, all right. So in my head, I was like, they're all looking at me like, oh, no, who's this fat nerd? He's supposed to take care of us. But then I just kind of started getting in with the guys, and one of them came up and was like, hey, can you take me to sick call? I was like, sure, man, let's go. So, I started taking care of him that way, and they're like, all right, I like this guy. He's actually taking care of us.
So that's I kind of want to go into that a little bit. I'm kind of happy that you said that. So it seems like again, I've never been stationed with the Marines, so I might be talking out of ignorance, but it seems like you really have to kind of prove yourself as a corpsman and a doc before they kind of accept you as one of their own. Is that like a fair judgment, or?
Pretty much, because I mean, it's just like any job. Not all corpsmen are created equal, so you can have good ones and bad ones. And those guys have had all those guys had already deployed before to Afghanistan, and they had just come back less than like 8 or 9 months before that. So they had some good corpsmen in at the time. I guess they didn't really like the corpsman that they had. He was always trying to like blow them off, like, hey, I'll take you to sick call tomorrow, kind of thing. So once I started taking care of him medically, they were like, all right, this guy's not bad. And then
so how many guys were you responsible for as like for yourself?
So each platoon has their own. They have a set of corpsmen usually, and then so the 2 corpsmen kind of tag team the Marines as far as like who needs what. So they have a choice, like, hey, I'm gonna go to Doc so and so or Doc so and so. So you're not really broken down too much, but you have a little bit of help. So I think I forget how many dudes we had when I first got there. It was like 30-something, 40-something.
So it's still pretty. I mean, I wouldn't say like a small group, but I mean, it's still for 2 of you taking care of 30 guys.
Yeah.
I would assume that's a lot of work.
It can be.
So, how long were you there before?
The first field op?
Yeah.
I was there for like 2 weeks, and they're like, all right, we need to go get all your crap. So I had to go get all my Marine-issued gear and everything. And from there, we went to AP Hill up in Virginia. It's an Army base that we were using. So my first field op was a 30-day field op. I had no idea what I was doing.
So you're out there for 30 days?
Yep.
Oh, wow. And is that because do they get longer when like you're working up to a deployment, or was that just something that's pretty common to do a 30-day one?
No, it's part of like your pre-deployment workup. So I got there March 15th or so, and they're like, all right, hey, get your shit checked in. We got a 30-day field op coming up in 2 weeks, and then we got 30 days off. We're going to do all the pre-deployment medical stuff we need to do, and then we got 30-day field op in California. And then we got about a week or so you get for leave, and then we're going to Afghanistan. So I was like, oh, okay.
That's another. So you kind of have to prove to the military that like you are ready to deploy, and that's like another misconception I feel like a lot of people have, is you know, a certain amount of months before you deploy. I'm not really going to go into time frames, but you have to pass a lot of inspections and things like that in order to even be allowed to deploy, and that's like a again, I feel like I just keep interjecting and kind of commenting on like misconceptions for the general public, but I mean, you know, it's not just, I mean, like, yes, they can go, all right, you know, time to go, but there's also things in place to make sure that, you know, you're ready to go. So
yeah, there's a set of checklists for every deployment in every branch. So it depends on what their mission is. They have a checklist of, all right, we need to get these things done prior to leaving,
or
depending on different training requirements.
Right, qualified in these things because you know the mission is you're going to be using these things on the mission, so you need to know how to use them or how to do it. Like I'm assuming like tactics and things like that is more of what the Marines need to train on.
Yeah.
But all right, so how long were you attached to them before you went on to the deployment? I'm assuming that sounds like less than a year then.
It was right after 4th of July weekend. I think it was like July 10th or something. And I got there in March.
Oh, wow. So just a couple of months.
Mm-hmm. So I got checked in, and then we did the 30-day field op, and then another 30-day stint or so of getting shadow records made and shots and all kinds of stuff.
All right.
And then 30 days out in California. They used to call it CAX, but now it's ITX. It's out in California in the Mojave Desert. They kind of teach you desert warfare and things like that.
All right, and then you fly from there and you go right overseas?
No, we flew back. So they flew from there back to Camp Lejeune. And like I think we had like a week or 2 weeks before we left from there. And they gave us like 6 days of pre-deployment leave. They're like, all right, we're going to war. Go spend time with your family for 6 days.
All right, and what was kind of going through your mind then?
I was pretty excited to go, but at the same time, it's nerve-wracking. You're going to go fight a war, and you've been training,
right?
Doing all this simulated combat, just drilled into your head all day. And then, like I said, most of the guys that I was leaving with had already deployed before, and they did the initial push through Marja in Afghanistan, which was one of the major battles of the Afghanistan war. So those guys were battle hardened already, and they've already seen some of the atrocities of war, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. Like they lost one of their friends, and they had a couple other dudes, or a couple other guys were killed, and a couple of them were injured and things like that. So they were pretty. They knew what was going on, but I was like the new guy.
Right. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's like a pretty big. That's probably like a very weird, state of mind. Like you're doing all this training and you're training and you're excited to finally put that training to the test, but on the flip side of that you're like you're going where you're going. So that was probably definitely like a weird 'cause, on ships and stuff, we train a lot, and when we go out to sea, it's like
it's like a continuation of training. You don't have that oh shit moment. I'm actually doing this.
Right. Like we're there more for sometimes ships run into like weird situations, but when you're going on the ground, like you're gonna go into some stuff. Like
you're landing in an active war zone.
Yeah. So that's we'll get more into that, I guess. So so you come back to North Carolina after doing the training in California, and then you head over. You go to like Germany, right? Is that where and then you fly? What's the?
So we had to take a bus from Camp Lejeune to Cherry Point, which is a Marine Air Station. Mm-hmm. I think that was like an hour and a half or something like that. And then from there, we waited for, I don't know, 4 hours on the airstrip because they got to get our weight and all the gear that we have. They have to plug it all in, make sure we're not overweight for the airplane. So then the airplane shows up, and we take a commercial plane from there to Maine. Bangor, I think it's Bangor, Maine. So we land there, and then they refuel, and then from there we flew to Germany, and then we got off there for a little bit. And then we flew from Germany to Kyrgyzstan. So while we were there, we got off on the airstrip, and they bussed us over to the little main base, and we were there for, I don't know, a week, maybe, if that. And then we got on military planes, and then we flew into Afghanistan. So we flew into Camp Dwyer, which is just a small airstrip out in the desert. And then we were there for about another week. And then we loaded up onto helicopters, CH-53s. And then we're like, all right, now we're actually going to where we're going.
Right.
So they still didn't have that, like, oh, shit, I'm in Afghanistan. Like, there's a war zone. Because, like I said, it was just bare bases.
Right. Because we have, like, the big bases and stuff that we fly, like, that you guys, I keep saying we, but that you guys fly into. I mean, it's in a pretty, I guess, safe. I mean, you're still over there, but it's in a pretty controlled region that, like, we have under control, right? Like,
yeah, it's basically a forward deployed base.
Right. But the smaller camps and like outposts is like that you guys pretty much stay at, right? And that's most of the time that's in not so controlled areas, right?
Yeah, that's right there. Because we deployed to the Helmand province, where a lot of the battles have been fought. At least on the Marine Corps side of the house, the Army usually goes up north more, but the South is where the Marine Corps did a lot of their fighting.
So, okay, that was my next question. So you're in South Afghanistan?
Mm-hmm. And the Helmand province.
Okay.
So we first flew into a place called Treknawa, and I just remember when we landed, I was like, you see the movies, you go into war, you're like, oh, as soon as I hit the ground, there's gonna be bombs everywhere, and there's gonna be a gunfight. So your heart rate goes like through the roof, and as you're getting off the helicopter, and then you just kind of go into the little forward operating base that was there, and we were gonna start turning over with the unit that was already there. But once I walked inside, I was like, oh, okay. Nothing happened. It was anticlimactic. Like, all right, your guys' tent's gonna be over here. You can put your shit down. Oh, okay.
You're thinking like the back hatch of the helicopter is gonna open up and there's just gonna be instant
fighting. It's gonna
fighting.
be like D-Day. But yeah, literally nothing happened.
All right. So yeah, I was actually curious. So how does that? So you guys get there and then does like the other division that's already there, do they like hop on those same helicopters and leave, or is there like a time period where you guys like they turn over all the intelligence and like, hey, this is what's going on, things like that?
Yeah. So what they'll do is they call it ripping. So you rip with the unit that's there. So they're going to continue manning the posts. They're going to continue patrolling. Your platoon commander gets with their platoon commander, and they start debriefing each other and stuff like that. And then, like, after the first day or so, they kind of have some of the Marines that are with us start to stand post up there with those guys, and they kind of tell them, like, hey, we've taken contact from this direction. Hey, keep your eye on this over here. Checking their fields of fire as far as the post. And then, like, the squad leaders and team leaders start going on patrols with the current unit that's there. Mm-hmm. And then they kind of turn over with some of the locals in the area, too, like some of the good guys, per se. Hey, this is going to be the guy that's taking over. They're going to be helping you out. And they kind of get a lay of the land that way. Then they come back and they tell us. And then it kind of transitions into, all right, now it's our squad's turn to go with one of their dudes, as opposed to one of our dudes in their squad. Yeah, so, like, their team leader and their squad leader comes with us. So that's kind of how it happens.
How long is that, like, transition period? Is it, like weeks or?
Yeah, it's about a week.
Oh, okay.
Because they push out 2 or 3 patrols a day, so it was pretty quick.
So what are patrols? Is that where you're, like, hey, like, we're gonna go check out this square block of land and see what's up, or does each patrol have like a certain mission, or
Yeah, it
does it?
depends. They have different types of patrols. They have like security patrols where you're basically just establishing a presence. They have contact patrols, which you kind of go out there looking for stuff depending on what the mission is. Sometimes you'll have an objective you have to do. I mean, it all depends. Sometimes they want you to set up a vehicle checkpoint and check all the vehicles coming through.
And you
So
guys
it
also
depends.
like had like set up meetings with like the locals and stuff like that, like the village elders and things like that, right? Or and
Yeah, they call them shuras.
have a relationship with them in some capacity.
hmm So we're supposed to be winning over the hearts and minds, and we try to help them with stuff,
Right.
and try to bring some kind of security to their area. And then in turn, they're supposed to help us. Like, hey, somebody put a bomb over there. Don't walk there.
Gotcha.
So that's how it's supposed to work in theory.
But that's pretty dangerous for them to do, also, right?
Yeah,
To,
because they're almost considered like a spy per se.
right.
You know, hey, the Taliban comes over while we're at our base after they see them talking to us, and they're like, hey, what'd you tell them, kind of thing.
Right.
And they're going to be way more ruthless than any military base or military personnel.
Right.
So it's they're in a kind of a shitty spot.
Right. But that's essentially why we're supposed to be there to help them, right?
Yeah.
All right. So you get there, you guys do the turnovers. What was your first couple weeks there like? Obviously, it was your first deployment. How long did it kind of take for the jitters to go away, or did they even go away, or?
The first patrol, I remember stepping outside the wire, and we're going on our first patrol. It's like, oh shit, going on my first patrol. I'm doing it. I'm doing military things in quotes. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I don't know. It was pretty nerve wracking that first patrol. It's like I don't know what the hell to do.
Any eventful? Was it eventful patrol, or was it pretty? Nothing really
The first
happened.
one?
Yeah.
The first one, we went over to an area and we sat in a ditch, or what they call a wadi. We sat there and we watched a compound for a little while, just kind of doing some recon on an area, and then we marched back. That was it.
All right.
So saw some of the locals and gave them the old hello wave.
So
That's about it.
was it still the same breakdown? Like it was still you and one other corpsman and about 30 guys, or is it when you're on deployment? Is it broken up a little bit differently?
So what we had done, right before deployment, they kind of restructured the battalion. They took a rifle company from each, or a rifle platoon from each company, and made up another company because they were going to go in a different area. So we were short-handed. So when we got to Trek now, we had more bases to occupy than we did people. So they split our platoon in half. So they took half the platoon and a corpsman and put them over in this area, and then I was the only corpsman with half the platoon over in that base. So I was the only corpsman there.
For like 15 guys, about.
It was about 20, 25, something like that.
Okay. And I mean, obviously, you guys. I mean, you don't have internet. You don't have anything really. So did you feel like the unit like cohesion? Obviously, you get a lot closer. The whole brotherhood aspect and things like that. Did you feel like that really grew on deployment, or?
Yeah, I mean, you start talking to people, and I mean, that's all you can do is you go on patrols with these guys, and you just sit there in your port, so you just bullshit with each other.
Right.
But that part kind of sucked. There wasn't a whole lot going on in that area, but I was just so tired because it was my first deployment, and it was just me and half the platoon, and then every patrol that went out, I had to go on.
So what was like your day to day, your day to day job? Like what, give me a basic day out over there.
All right, so let's say whenever the morning patrol was getting kicked off, let's say we're stepping out the wire at like 6:30. They'd wake us all up. Whoever was going on that patrol, the squad leader would go get them all, group them up, and kind of do a pre-patrol brief. And we'd look at a map and you say, hey, we're going to go over here today. We're going to go over here today. We're going to go do this. If there's any intel that needs to be passed, like, hey, be on the lookout for whatever. That's all passed during that. So you do that, and then you kind of hang out until you're getting ready to step. You put all your gear on. They do their radio checks and everything, make sure everybody has ammo or whatever they need, water. And then you go out on the patrol. You just kind of walk around, try not to step on bombs, and watch out for the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, you come back, and then everyone kind of takes their gear off, rehydrates. And you kind of got some downtime. Then they have the people on watch, and if something happens, they're like, hey, we need you to go check this area out. They'll scramble the quick response force, whoever's on QRF. So I'd have to put my gear back on and go back out again. So there's usually like a morning patrol and an evening patrol. So at least 2 a day.
And on
in between, you kind of take care of the Marines. Like, hey, I rolled my ankle on that last patrol. You take a look at it, or whatever. They, you walk around and ask them if they're doing okay.
Did you guys take any? Did you ever get like attacked or anything on your compound?
That spot, no, we never got attacked. We took contact about a week or so after we got there. I think it was like 10 days into the deployment.
On a patrol?
We did
on a patrol?
On a patrol, yeah. They never came after our base. It's kind of a stupid move on their part, because they'd be coming straight into machine guns up on the post.
That's true, I guess.
So they try to get us when we're more vulnerable and we're out and about.
So did you ever get into any kind of contact or any kind of fight at all on that deployment?
Yeah. So in that area, like I said, we did a helicopter op somewhere. We're gonna go check something out, and we got shot at that patrol, and then we dumped a whole shitload of rounds back because it was our first engagement. So everyone's adrenaline's to the roof. The guys that haven't been in contact before, they're just dumping rounds because it's chaotic. You don't know what's going on. And then your adrenaline spike goes to the roof. And the guys that have deployed before, they're itching to shoot. So they finally get to fire at the enemy.
So your first ever contact was when you were flying in a helicopter?
No. We had landed. They helicoptered us out to like the middle of nowhere, and then we were supposed to patrol back. So like about a half hour after we landed, they were kind of tracking us, and I guess they opened up on us.
I was gonna say that's probably like. I mean, I guess regardless, it's scary to get shot at, but getting shot at while you're in a big metal flying object probably would have been extra scary.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot you could do there.
So I mean, what was that like? I mean, obviously that's something that not a lot of people experience. What was your first firefight like? Well,
I didn't even know we were getting shot at first, because nobody knows what it sounds like to get shot at.
Right. It's
not like the movies where you hear the gun. You just hear like a snap, like a pop, or the little poppers you have on 4th of July, and you throw it and it pops.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of sounds like that. So I heard a snap, and I looked at the snap instead of the direction it's coming from. So I was like, what was that? And then I looked forward, and the guys that had deployed before had already pushed forward to a wall, and I'm still standing there on a bridge, like a little footbridge. And I was like, oh shit, I'm getting shot at. And then I heard like 7 or 8 more snaps and a zing, and the zing means it was pretty close. So I was like, whoa. So I ran back around behind a berm, and then at that point the adrenaline went through the roof, and I was watching the rounds hit the wall in front of me as I'm running back across to the berm.
Were guys like yelling at you while you're standing there, like?
Nah, it was pretty quick. It was like snap, and I looked, and then I looked forward, and there was like snap, 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 and I was like, oh shit. So that's like they were still maneuvering to the wall. I was like, oh shit. So I turned around and they were shooting. I was watching all the rounds hit in front of me.
Jeez. So were you? Did you ever get to like shoot back, or did what ended that engagement? Were they just trying to scare you guys and ran off, or?
Yeah, they shot like a magazine or 2 at us, and then so I fired a couple of rounds back, but that was it. I was more worried about making sure everybody was good.
Right.
So the Marines always said, like, hey, if we take contact, get down, make sure we're good, then you can shoot back. Right. Unless you like no shit see the guys that are shooting, right, and go ahead and engage them. But they wanted me to make sure everybody else was good, and they also didn't want me to get hit.
Right, because if Doc goes down, then
who's
gonna take
they're not as, they're trained, but not like the amount of training that we got.
Right. All right.
So a lot of times I didn't get a chance to shoot back for the most part because it's chaotic, it's loud, you're yelling, is everyone good? And once you get the roger up from everybody, because they're shooting also, so you can't really hear them. And then they're like, all right, they're good. And it's like, all right, my turn to shoot. And they're like, hey, we're pushing, move right. And I'm like, son of a bitch, I didn't even get to shoot. So then you start maneuvering. But a lot of the engagements in Afghanistan are what we call shoot and scoot.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll wait until they have a spot to where they can shoot at you and get away. So they'll like dump a magazine or dump a belt, depending on what kind of weapon they're using, and then they haul ass out of there. then we try to maneuver around to catch up to them. But it all depends on what they're trying to pull that day.
So, how long was that after you got there? Like your first?
Oh, the first one?
Yeah.
It was about, like total time that we got to Afghanistan, or like when we got to our patrol base?
Like, what was the time frame from when you got to your control base to your first firefight?
It was
Or
about a week and a half.
Oh, okay. So they kind of just threw the Afghans kind of threw it right at you as soon as you guys got there.
Yeah, because they know what's going on. They see the helicopters landing, a whole bunch of dudes getting off. They're like, all right, there's a new unit coming. So what they'll do is they'll kind of see what your tactics are and see what you start to do before they really start to mess with you, because you're the new guys in town.
Right.
So they don't want to be like, Well, it'd be the same as if, you see an army unit in your town, and then all of a sudden you see new ones coming in. You're going to know what's going on in your neighborhood.
Right.
And you're not going to really mess with those guys right off the bat. You're going to watch them.
Feel them out.
Yep. So they waited about a week or so, and then they started shooting at us.
So after that, was it like a pretty regular thing, or?
Not in that area. That area wasn't very kinetic. So we were only there for about a month in that spot. We were kind of just there to rip with the unit because they were leaving.
Mm-hmm.
And then another unit was going to come relieve us. So we were just kind of like holding that spot for them.
So when so you were in that Providence for just that month? What was it called?
No, we
again?
stayed
I'm sorry.
Province.
So you
Without the D.
You were in the same location?
Yeah, we're still in the Helmand province.
Okay.
It's kind of like their equivalent of like a state almost.
Okay. But you just moved to a different, like a different camp?
Different area, yeah. Okay. So we went back to Camp Leatherneck, which is the big base that's over there.
Right.
And we were there for about 20 days or so because we restructured our platoon and everything. So they grouped us all back together, and they're like, all right, we're going to make new platoons, because right at the time it was only 1st and 2nd platoon, and they needed 3 positions filled. So they kind of broke off a bunch of people. So I went from 2nd platoon, and then they made a new 3rd platoon, so I went there.
And was it same kind of thing? It was just you? You were the only corpsman?
Nope, it was me and one other corpsman that were at this spot. So then we went to Sangin, which is a pretty shitty spot. Like even the Afghan dudes in the ANA, the Afghan National Army, they didn't even want to go to Sangin.
And why is that?
It's just the fighting there is a lot more intense.
It's
a lot more bombs. Their bomb makers were more advanced in that area.
It was just more controlled by was it the Taliban or the
who knows, man.
Or
Bad guys.
Bad guys.
Yeah.
All right.
They have a bunch of different names, and a lot of them aren't even really like, they don't hold an allegiance to any one thing. It all depends.
Gotcha. It's much more complicated over there than people think, I'm assuming, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you get to this new base. As you said, it's a much crappier area. So what was the op tempo like there? Were you still doing like the 2 patrols a day, or did you guys have to do more since it was more of like a high risk area? Or
so when we got there was no permanent bases. There was a recon unit that was there, and they would kind of bounce around from compound to compound. They had one big base, and then they'd like fly out of there over to this area, and then take over a compound and patrol out of that area for a little bit, and then go back to the big base, and then fly over to this area over here, patrol out of that area for a little bit, and then come back to the big base. So they had no like day-to-day presence there at the time. The British had been there before. They couldn't set up bases. And I remember I Googled it because they're like, hey, we're going to Sangin. And I was like, all right, where the hell is that? And I started looking into it, and apparently a whole bunch of dudes got fucked up at like different units in different countries that were there and occupying. So I was like, I don't know if I want to go here.
So you had like internet access at Leatherneck? Because that's
yeah,
like,
that was at Leatherneck.
That's like a much bigger. I mean, that's a pretty well known. I feel like a lot of people know about Camp Leatherneck. That's like a pretty well known thing. I feel like on the news and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's the big base. It's one of the big bases that's over there.
Okay, so you had a decent amount of Did they have like showers and stuff for you guys there too, or nah?
At Leatherneck,
Yeah.
yeah, Leatherneck had it's all like mobile type stuff, kind of like portables, you know.
Hmm.
It's a bunch of modular like buildings and like shower trailers and stuff because they have to remember it's an open desert. There's nothing there,
Right.
so we had to bring our own infrastructure there. So, I mean, but they had all the stuff you'd need.
Hmm.
They had a chow hall and even had like a little mini PX, so you can go buy stuff.
So you you were there for, you said, like a week or two at Leatherneck, and then you flew out to this other shittier place.
Yeah. So we were there, we regrouped, and then we went out to Sangin, and then they're like, "Hey, you guys' mission is going to be to set up permanent patrol bases, but first we have to go make them."
Wow.
So since we were third platoon, we're like, "All right, first we're going to go set up first." Third platoon, right? That's what I said.
Yeah.
So like we're gonna go push out and help set up first platoon's position. So we went and helped those guys out, helped set up their main position, push patrols out of there, and then they're like, all right, now we're gonna go set up second platoon's position. So we went and helped those guys set up their position, patrolled out of there. All right, now you guys are gonna go set up your own.
So was there like Army Corps of Engineers with you guys that like helped you build stuff, or was it like just you guys?
So what we did was we'd go take over a compound. We'd have like the PAO dudes that would go around and be like, "Oh, okay, we need your compound. Here's money. We're gonna lease it from you," kind of deal. So we take over a compound. It's just like almost like Adobe kind of a deal. It's just mud that they built a long time ago. So it's almost like a little castle. It's got walls and everything and rooms. And then we just fortify it with sandbags and razor wire and stuff like that. And we bring all our equipment in there. We set up like a COC and everything.
Okay. So you're going out in the villages and just taking over a little portion of it?
Yep.
Okay.
Like a small little cluster of compounds.
And you'd like buy it from the villager that owned it, or like how did that work?
They would either buy it or like do like a land lease agreement with them.
Okay. That's pretty funny. You're over there doing real estate while you're in the middle of a war.
Yeah, they had like their own special little team that would do that. They'd come with us and then they'd work out the deal and then we would just set it up.
Was it civilian guys that would do that, or was it military still?
No, it was like Marine Corps. I think they were lawyers. I don't know. There was something.
Huh.
It was an officer and then like two of his little guys.
That's interesting. It's pretty funny how normal, I should say normal war is, but like, I mean, you wouldn't think like we're over there doing like real estate deals like in the middle of a battlefield. You'd think we'd just kick in the door and be like, "Hey, this is ours now."
Well, we've done that in the past in different wars and things like that. So they were trying to take a nicer approach. Like I said, the hearts and minds of the local populace.
Right, because the only way to win over there is to, like you said, to win them over, so they would help you guys out and to distinguish who the bad guys were and who weren't, right?
Yeah.
So what was your time like there at that new camp?
We didn't even get out of we were going to push out a patrol the first week we were there, but we didn't even get the whole patrol out of the base because they found an ID.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, this is good. It's right outside the base, and we can't even leave yet because they're going to call it EOD to come blow it up. So I was like, this is going to be a little squirrely.
So going to what, I mean, obviously it's an improvised explosive device. It's just a ghetto-made bomb.
Mm-hmm.
But how do they, because there's different types, right? There's like pressure plate ones, and then there's ones where like they kind of like watch you from a distance and like detonate it themselves, right? Like there's all different kinds.
Mm-hmm. So they use different explosives too. It's not like C4 or anything. It's they use fertilizer and they mix it up that way. I forget what it's called, amyl nitrate or something like that. Whatever the compound is, and then they take that and they put it into like some kind of container, whether it's a jug or whatever kind of bomb they're trying to make. They usually use plastic jugs because you can't pick it up with a metal detector.
Oh wow.
So they fill that up, and then they put a blasting cap in there of some sort, some kind of little popper to set off the explosive. And then they run the wires from that out to a pressure plate. Um, so you step on it, and it connects the circuit and blows it up. Or they'll do like a remote one of some sort, either it's with a phone or however they want to hook it up. It's whatever sends the electrical signal to actually set off the blasting cap, which then blows up the device.
So they would dig these things just like right in the middle of the road.
Depends. Like certain areas, sometimes they'd put them in like doorways of compounds. So if you're like trying to bust into a compound, you step on a pressure plate, you blow up. They'll put them on like little goat paths that they knew we'd be patrolling on.
Mm-hmm.
So little footpaths and stuff like that. They'd put an IED there. Alleyways, up on mountaintops where they think it'd be a good position for you to kind of scout out down into the valley. They put stuff up there. Different positions they thought you'd be in. They'd just put them there.
So every time you guys went out, was there always people with metal detectors like in front, like leading the way, or?
Yeah, we had a guy. He was just a regular rifleman that they went to a class and they handed him the little sweeper or the CMD, and they're like, "Hey, just sweep in front of you. And if you find something, stop." And then there's a whole protocol for that. And then if you find wires or anything like that, then you call EOD and they come blow it up.
So what like did they kind of train you guys on like what to like look for, or?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different IED trainings and stuff we did, like what to look for, watch for debris, watch for like unsettled earth or like a little divot in the dirt or something, or what they call disturbed earth. But in saying, and they were really good at them. Like that was their specialty. They were really good at making bombs, so they were hard to tell. And they barely had any metal in them. So even with the metal detector, it didn't really work. It was all visual detection.
And I mean, those things took out like trucks and stuff, right? Like they're not like these. They're not just little explosives.
It depends. I mean, sometimes they put like a 40-pound explosive out there. That'd be on the roadways most of the time. They'd put little 10 to 20 pounders in the goat paths or up on mountaintops, which is for personnel. They'd try to blow up personnel. So it depends on what they're trying to hit, depending on how much they were going to use.
So did you guys ever encounter one? Oh well, I mean, I'm sure you've because you said like on your first patrol you guys found one, right? But did you?
Yeah, they found one and blew it up.
Did you guys ever not find one and suffer?
Yeah, we had
consequences.
Yeah, that was the shitty part about it. Was like you always have to like look around at the ground. So you're looking at the ground where you're stepping, and also trying to look to see if you're getting set up on a good shot at. So we had a patrol one time. One of our squad leaders actually stepped on one. The big ass dude, Corporal Vitale. He made sergeant since then, but so he was walking through an alleyway and half of his squad missed the ID and he stepped on it and it blew his. He ended up being like a double amputee, so we had to go over there and respond. And his corpsman was already there helping, but we were able to save him. But I mean, he had some other injuries too afterwards. So he's not all there mentally per se.
So he lost both of his legs. Or did he lose like his leg and arm on the same side, or?
No, he lost both of his legs. So we had to go there and put tourniquets on and bandage him and all that good stuff. Get fluids going. Called in a bird. They came and picked him up.
Would they use that to like initiate onto you guys? Like once an ID exploded and all hell broke loose, would they like then open fire and like just totally, confuse the shit out of you guys, or like?
They'd use different tactics. Sometimes they would try to do that, or sometimes they'd shoot at you to try to go towards an ID. But pretty much every IED had a secondary nearby. So actually, like around the corner from where he stepped on his, there was a secondary that EOD came out and confirmed afterwards. But because we were getting ready to carry him on a stretcher to an open field and throw smoke for the medevac bird that was coming in.
Mm-hmm.
But they're like, hey, don't go down that way. There's a secondary. And I was like, shit, man, that's the way my whole team came. Like, we all walked over it somehow.
Wow. Yeah, that
So
must
like my
be.
whole squad just somehow didn't step on it.
I mean, like you said, like that's pretty. I mean, you're in like this city or town that you have no idea about, and then like you said, you got to constantly look at the ground, but also I need to look in front of you to, like you said, see if there's. I mean, that must be a pretty hectic. Again, going back to like mental state, like you're just. I
Yeah,
can't
you're
even.
constantly scanning everything, and it's hard to kind of break that when you get back too,
Right.
because you look at the ground, you're scanning the distance, you're looking behind you, you're turning, you're looking this way, you're watching the guy in front of you, you're looking at the guy behind you, and there's all kinds of stuff going on, and your eyes just kind of like shoot back and forth all over the place all the time. And if you do that for 7 months straight, it's hard to kind of break that habit.
Right. And I'm sure if you see a civilian, you're trying to figure out if they have a bomb underneath their clothes or.
Yeah, we wouldn't let any of the civilians just walk up to our patrol. We'd have a guy go out there, tell them to stop, lift their shirt, because we had an interpreter with us, so he'd be like, tell them to say this. So if they came up close to us, we'd all get in like a defensive position and you know, tell them to lift their shirt, make sure they don't have a bomb on them or a weapon, and then we'd go talk to them.
So was that your first casualty? Combat casualty was the double amputee. Or did you
Yeah, that
handle
was my
that?
first
Or
actual casualty. Yeah, so
I mean, what was that like?
it's pretty shitty. I mean, it's hectic. There was already one Marine. One of the other Marines was putting a tourniquet on the one leg. The other corpsman was putting a tourniquet on his side, and then I just kind of went up to his head and started like I'd put an airway in, and I ended up pushing fluids on him and everything, and started writing up the admin type stuff as far as like a little piece of paper to turn over with the medevac dudes. So
So
I was doing some of that, and then I ended up doing a fast one on his chest.
that's like an IO.
hmm
Oh wow. So what? I mean, for people who are listening, who may not know what that is, what is that?
It's an interosseous IV, so it means in the bone. So it's like this needle that punches instead of doing a typical IV in your arm into a vein, it goes into their bone, and then you can push fluids that way.
It's essentially just an IV that's a lot faster, right? Essentially, or it goes right to where it needs to go.
Yeah, well, I couldn't get an IV stick into his arm because, like I said, he was a big old dude. He worked out a lot, and then he was kind of seizing up. He was contracting all his muscles, so I couldn't get a space. So I just said, "Screw it, this guy needs fluid," and I punched it into his chest bone. Started pushing fluids.
Wow. So I mean, did they engage you after that ID went off, or was it just
No,
an
there was one
isolated?
of those just set it and forget it kind of deals. I don't think there was anybody around. But
So
what they were trying to do was hit the one patrol and then also the patrol that was coming around to help. But like I said, somehow we all missed that secondary.
so we're is it kind of like uh if you step on the pressure plate, does it go off instantly, or do you have to step off of it also, or does it you know what I mean?
As soon as you make the contact, because the pressure plate is essentially like a sandwich board of two pieces of wood or cardboard or whatever the case may be, with like springs in between it
Mm-hmm.
to keep them separated. And then the top side has a connection for the wire, and the bottom side has a connection for the wire. And when you step on it, what it does is those two connections meet with the pressure,
Mm-hmm.
and then once that connection completes the circuit, then it sends an electrical charge to the blasting cap, which then blows the explosive.
All right.
So as soon as you put enough pressure on there to make the connection, it'll blow up.
So you
And
have.
then they have reverse pressure plates for the same thing, to where there's tension on it. And then a lot of times they'll put that underneath the explosive jug. That way, when you go to mess with the IED or remove the explosive, it'll complete the circuit that way. Once you remove it, it'll release tension and then complete the circuit and blow up. So
They thought of
it all
everything.
depends. hmm We actually had one of those where EOD came to pull it out. It was a 40-pounder. So it was like a 20-pound explosive jug, and then on top of that it had a reverse pressure plate, and then on top of that it had another 20-pound explosive, and on top of that it had a regular pressure plate.
Wow.
So that was a pretty big one. The EOD came out and they like dug out the jug a little bit, removed the pressure plate, and then when they went to go pull the jug with a string at a safe distance, they pulled the jug and it just blew up.
Wow. So you encounter your first casualty.
Mhm.
I'm assuming you guys head back to the compound after all that was said and done, or
Yep, and you just patrol back to your base, carry on
so.
the day.
So I mean, how was that night? Like, what was going through your head?
I don't know, I didn't sleep much that day. Kind of sucked.
And
But
what?
plus, we didn't know if he was going to make it or not because he was pretty fucked up.
Right.
So that's going through your head, and you're just kind of waiting on word. And then, I don't know, eventually I fell asleep because I was pretty tired that night. Um, we had been out since like 4 o'clock that morning. And then we ended up taking that casualty at sundown, so it was pretty fucking late.
And how did the? I mean, you said most of the Marines you were deployed with were already pretty battle hardened.
Mhm.
Did it affect them at all? I mean, obviously, no matter what, it's going to affect you. But was it more of like a just another day here kind of thing for them, or did it affect morale at all? Or
Apparently, uh, no, you could tell it affected everybody, but they were probably a little better at dealing with it. Some of them would come by and say like, "Hey, doc, how you doing?" kind of thing,
right?
and
Because
they'd tell you like, "Hey, you did a good job out there, good work," shit like that.
all right. So how? Um, I
And
mean,
that was only after about 6 or 7 days of being in that new area.
and then
So it's like we got there and we haven't even set up our base at that point. We were still doing like what they were calling surge ops. They were just surging out into certain areas, taking over an area and patrolling out of it for a day or two, just kind of probing the land. Like we haven't even set up our permanent base yet, and he already got blown up.
So was that pretty much the tempo from there on after, or I
Oh
mean,
yeah, like we were getting shot at while we were at the main base. Like we had a big truck, a flatbed pull up with a bunch of MREs, and they were shooting at it. So it was like they kicked out a patrol the third day we were there. They were getting shot at. Like it was pretty nuts over there. Because like I said, there was no permanent force there.
right?
So we were the new guys in town. They're gonna go shoot at us.
Wow.
And that was before we even set up our base. So once we set up our base and we started pushing out patrols, it was pretty quiet for about the first 4 or 5 days. And then we did what we called a Shura, like I was talking about earlier. We invited all the locals into the area to come talk to our company commander. And they pushed out a bunch of security for that. And they had to sit in a static position, which means we weren't patrolling, which was stupid. Um, for that event, we were out there for like 4 hours. So apparently we got set up on pretty bad. And we got into a pretty long firefight there. And I think we ended up taking 4 casualties on that patrol.
That same patrol with the WMPT.
No, that was about a week later.
Um, so were you on hand for any of those casualties, or was it different?
No, that one I was there the whole time. Like we got pinned down pretty bad. Uh, and then they had snuck up on us because there was a cornfield in front of us from where I
Mm-hmm.
was. So they initiated the attack with the RPG. So we were just sitting there, and all of a sudden it was just ba-boom. And we're like, oh shit. So we start firing back a little bit, and then they're shooting. And then I guess they had snuck up in the corn and were tossing grenades at us. And they had a couple of them blow up pretty close to me. And then we were just shooting back in that direction. And then we had one of my buddies come down. He was our radio operator, Lance Corporal Harper. He pushed down and to where our squad leader was because I was right next to him. He told me to push down to the next tree. So I was like, all right. So I moved down. And then after that, all hell broke loose for the most part. Harper was hit. He went down. Our squad leader was hit. He went down. I was pretty rocked from the grenades already. And then so I was trying to get over to those two to kind of help them out, but I couldn't because we were getting pinned down so bad. And I was pretty much in the open. Then we ended up spinning out a QRF force, or the Quick Reaction Force. And then they pushed out to come help. We kind of got caught in the crossfire because they weren't sure of our total position.
Mm-hmm.
So they were shooting at the enemy, and the enemy was shooting at us, and we were in the middle. That kind of sucked. And then, the QRF had launched some grenades too, and one of those landed kind of close to me also. So I'm like, why am I keep getting grenades blown up next to me? Just I want to go help these dudes out. And then eventually, like it calmed down enough to where, or I snapped out of it or whatever was going on. I don't know. I ended up pushing over to help them out. Harper had been hit in the chest, so he was in very good shape. And then the squad leader, he got shot in his arm, so he had a through and through in his arm, and then he got hit like 3 times in his plate carrier. His little microphone that he used to talk into the radio got shot off. He had a grazing wound to his leg. What else? He had some shrapnel in his lip. Somehow he caught shrapnel, but I didn't, even though we were under the same tree in the beginning.
So that
and then one of the other Marines got hit too. It hit him in his little side protector plate and kind of hit him in the back. Mm-hmm. And then we had another guy that had a concussion. And so that was all kind of happening at once.
And all those casualties were on you, pretty much?
Yeah, but then the other corpsman had pushed out too, with the quick reaction force, and he had come over and he was kind of snapping me out of it. Because like I said, I got rocked from the grenades pretty badly. And he kind of filled me in on most of it. Like, I don't remember a lot of it. So we started going to work on those two. And then, so I had one of the Marines checking on the guy that took the minor wound to the side sappy plate. So I had a guy check him out. And I said, all right, I'll check you out when I get back, kind of thing. So and then the helicopter started coming in, and we were taking more fire from the enemy. They were trying to shoot down the bird, because they were landing in an open field, obviously, because they can't land with a bunch of trees. So then we ran them out there, and then 2 of them left on a bird. And then we took the other 2 casualties back with us. We kind of egressed. And then, I assessed them when we got back.
So, I mean, it's pretty, as you describe, like, this battle, like, I'm kind of picturing it in my head. And it's pretty... not even sure the word I want to use, but you're just kind of describing it as it was just like a normal day, and you're talking about like getting hit by grenades and people going down around you and stuff, and it's just like it's very interesting, I guess. It just blows me.
I mean, there's nothing I can do about it now, so
right. It just kind of blows me away, the just how like normal.
Well, it was pretty hard for me for a while because Harper ended up not making it, so that sucked.
And was he? So kind of going back to what you said, like you said you took 2 guys back with you, and then 2 guys left on the bird. I'm assuming the guys left on the bird were Harper and your the guy that got hit in the arm, your squad leader.
Yeah, Clemens. He ended up being all right. He got shipped back to the States because he needed surgery and everything.
So did you? I mean, I'm assuming you patched them up or tried to patch them up, before they got put on the bird, right?
Yeah, me and the other corpsman. I mean, we were still taking a lot of fire, so we were kind of laying there, trying to do what we can and patch him up the best we could. But I mean, where he got hit, apparently it hit one of the arteries leading to his heart or something. I'm not 100% sure. But he was still alive when we left, or when they left on the bird. And apparently they made it all the way back to Camp Bastion, which is the medical part of Leatherneck. Mm-hmm. And I guess they rushed him into surgery, but by then it was too late. So after a while, so we got back. We took all our gear off and everything, and I was checking out the other 2 dudes. By the time I came over and got done with that, I came back over and they let us know, like, hey, Harper didn't make it. So,
I mean, what did that do? Was that your first casualty?
Yeah, it was the first guy that I lost. That was my 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th casualty, I guess, all at once. Because I think it wasn't that many days. I think it was like the 9th. Was when Vitaly got blown up, or the 10th even, and then Harper was the 13th. So it was pretty close together when we took a lot of our casualties.
Wow. And I mean, did you know how to feel, or what did that?
I don't know. I mean, there's not much you can. Like I said, I had a concussion too, so I was a little out of it. And then the next day we went on another patrol, and I don't remember that either. little bits and pieces. Probably shouldn't have went out on that patrol, but whatever. I don't know. And then apparently, I guess my attitude changed after that, from what I've heard from the other dudes saying. Like it wasn't fun anymore, kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
It got real.
Right. I mean, yeah. And I mean, how old are you at this time?
I think I was 25, something like that, mid-20s.
It's weird, man. Like I mean, I worked with you every day for 2 years, and I mean, you would never. I mean, obviously, you kind of told. Like, I heard the the story about like the first time you got shot at a couple of times, but you would have never known that you went through something that you just described. So I mean, I guess that's good.
Yeah.
But it's just
A lot of veterans and stuff, like dudes that have deployed, like they get kind of a bad rap because you got a couple of loudmouths out there that I fought in the big war, damn it. You know, like bow to me, and it's like, I get it. I mean, but especially when you're doing it to other military members, it's like, look, dude, I don't care. I mean, you can talk about it if you want to, but don't try to like make that your whole life.
Like use it to your
benefit. It's a thing you did, and it's awesome that you went and did that stuff. But I don't make that your whole existence.
Right. That's
You get wrapped up in it, and then a lot of people can't break out of it.
It's just like
and everybody handles stress differently too. So I don't know.
So I mean, I know you wear Harper's name on your wrist, right? You have one of those. What are those things even called? Are they just called like name bands, or I mean?
I think the company that we got ours to is the Hero bracelets or the KIA bracelets, Killed in Action bracelet. And it just has their name and where they were stationed at the time and things like that.
And it's a pretty common thing. I feel like a lot of, or I shouldn't say common, but
well, in the military, yeah.
Right. You see, it's like that metal, the silver metal, or sometimes they're black, or they start out black and all the black gets worn off, so they end up being silver.
It's just a little aluminum strip that kind of goes around your wrist. But you're starting to see less and less of them just because the dudes that were in at that time during the height of the wars is kind of fading out. But I mean, you still see them every once in a while.
Right.
They've kind of taken on a different meaning now too. So now it's like, if any service member dies, whether it's in combat or not, it's just like if somebody died in a drunk driving accident, they get a remembrance bracelet for them and stuff. And I'm like, that's
kind of takes away from the meaning of it.
Like, he wasn't really killed in combat. I get it. It sucks because I've had, I don't know, 1, 2, like 3 or 4 of my guys that I've served with have died not in combat, and I'm not going to get a bracelet for it. It doesn't take away from their life and what they've done, but
right.
I don't know. It holds a different meaning for me.
Oh, well, I mean,
but I'm not going to shit on what other people are doing. It's whatever. Right. Yeah. I just noticed that it's kind of taken a turn towards that, because you'd be like, oh, what happened? And it's like, oh yeah, he got killed by a drunk driver.
I mean,
okay.
It's kind of weird. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, a lot of those, a lot of the guys from those wars, all enlisted, freaking September 12th, 2001.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, in 3 years, that's their 20 years they can retire. Like, it's kind of weird to think how fast like time went.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, after that firefight, I mean, you guys were still there, right? Like, they didn't pull you out early, or even though you just lost 4 people?
2 didn't come back. 2 of them stayed there. One went, we had to medevac to just get monitored for his concussion, but he ended up coming back. The other guy just got a stitch.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, like the next day, like I said, I went on patrol again. The mission didn't stop because some people got hit. We just had people fill in their spots and keep going. So you really don't have a chance to really react to it, kind of thing. That's why a lot of dudes will come back and then it'll all hit them, because now they have a chance to think about it.
Think about it, right? So was it still a lot of action, even after that, or?
Yeah, we got shot at just about, for a couple of months. It was like every other day or so, at least twice a week. you're getting some kind of contact.
So you do 7 months there, 6 months there.
7 months.
7 months.
So, I mean, we really didn't take any more contact after like late December because they don't really fight in the winter too much.
Is that like a
They just they do like their spring offensive and they push through the summer months, and then in the winter they kind of go regroup and gather resources, or whatever the case may be, and then they come back for the spring offensive again. They call the spring and summer their fighting season.
Oh wow. So you come home, and I mean, are you still dealing with the Harper thing at that time, or?
Well, yeah, I guess that's something I still deal with, but I don't know. It took a little while because I mean his parents were there when we got back, so that was kind of weird too.
That's something that you still do, right? Like every year you guys go, because he was from Florida also, or?
He's from Georgia, like
or
outskirts
Georgia.
of Atlanta.
Because I remember you like took leave, right, to go do something for.
The anniversary of when he was killed, they do like a yearly thing where all the Marines get together. Pretty much all of them are out except for me now. They all did their time and got out, or they're off somewhere else. So, but we try to get together once a year on that weekend. Just get together and catch up and talk to his parents and tell his dad stories about Scott and stuff like that. It's therapeutic and it's fun.
I'm assuming that's his first name, Scott.
Yeah.
Okay. That's really cool, man. That's is that something that's pretty common that like Marines do, like when they with their fallen brothers, or?
From the guys that I was with, that's pretty common with them because they do it with another one of their guys too. He's buried up in Arlington. It's from the previous deployment. Like I said, I wasn't there for it, so I don't go to that one. But
right.
I see them all on social media and stuff. They're like up here for this event, and then there's another guy that's down in Gainesville. I actually went to one of those because I ended up meeting his parents, and they invited me to it, so I went to it. He was killed on the previous deployment too, so they do it fairly often, or it's pretty common, at least from my experience. I don't know if it's like a widespread thing, but.
So you get back to the States, and then do you transfer at that point, or no? Because I mean you've only been there for a little over a year at this point, right?
Yeah, it'd been about a year. No, actually, it was less than a year. Because I got there in March and we came back early February. So we did our post-deployment leave and everything, and then everyone that was a short timer all kind of got shifted around, and they restructured the battalion. Hey, who's going to be here for the next deployment kind of thing? Let's redo everything. And then I got moved from Alpha Company to, instead of just being a platoon corpsman, they're like, hey, Robert, we want you to be the senior line corpsman, which is kind of like the supervisor. So you're the main corpsman for a whole company, and you're in charge of the corpsmen that are in that company, as well as all the Marines, like medical readiness and shit like that. So I moved over to Weapons Company after that. Same battalion, just different company.
Mm-hmm.
In that bigger position.
So you're more of like a
It's kind of like an LPO.
Okay, so
for
you're
the company.
more of like a supervisor or manager of all the other corpsmen.
Yep.
Okay.
And whenever anybody in that company has field ops or whatever, I'll be like the safety corpsman because I need a corpsman there on standby that's designated as the safety corpsman. So I'd go do that while the other corpsmen trained.
And then you did another deployment, right, with a MEU?
Yep, I picked up second shortly after that. So we did a bunch of training, and then we went on a MEU, or Marine Expeditionary Unit. So we got attached to the 22nd Marine MEU, and then did all the workups for that, and then drove on up to Norfolk, got on the LHD, the USS Baton, and then we cruised across the Atlantic. And then we did training in different countries and stuff like that. And hit different Libo ports. It was pretty cool.
So it was obviously much, much different than your first deployment.
Oh yeah, this one was like a pleasure cruise.
Right.
But I mean, it gave me an opportunity to like get some different warfare devices and stuff, warfare quals.
So so a MEU is you're pretty much sitting on an actual Navy vessel, just kind of waiting for the call to to go somewhere and do the things that Marines do, right? Kind of like on standby, essentially.
Yeah, it's just a forward. What was it? Forward stationed uh, infantry or Marine unit. So they have like artillery, tanks, LAVs, AAVs. They got recon dudes, scout snipers, like all the infantry guys. They have some air assets. So they're kind of just floating around, and they're there to go in case something happens. That they could be kind of like a first responder.
Mm-hmm. And then how long was that one on the ship? Because you're on the ship the whole time, right? I mean, obviously, when you're doing training in the countries, you're not on the ship, but for the most part, you're on the ship, right? In the MEU?
Yeah, just doing ship stuff. So we were supposed to be 7 months, but that was right in 2014 when ISIS really started becoming a threat, and then you really started hearing about them in the news.
Mm-hmm.
It started in like they're starting to really. It was after Benghazi and all that stuff, but that had already happened. So they, Libya, we were off the coast there for a while, and then we pushed over off the coast of Iraq, things like that. So we were just on standby for the most part, and then we got extended for 2 months because they wanted us to push in and enforce the embassy in Iraq with more security. So we sent a bunch of guys in there to kind of force that position up, and then I stayed on the ship. Kind of sucked. They sent all my guys in, but they're like, just hang out here. So I was just hanging out on the ship, and then our time was up for the deployment. So they're like, all right, get back on, and then we came back home.
Mm-hmm. And then you went to Kings Bay, where we met after that.
Mm-hmm. And then it's time for my shore rotation. So I went there. But like I said, I don't know if I said it here, but I've told you before, I'm not a big fan of shore commands. I didn't join the Navy to sit in an office all day.
Yeah.
Do paperwork. I mean, being a corpsman, there's a lot of paperwork involved to begin with, but
right.
That's not necessarily why I joined.
Yeah, clinics are definitely a weird. I mean,
it's a different beast. It's not a full-on hospital, and it's not like an operational unit. So you just
right.
got a big doctor's office.
If like your intent is to be like a nurse or something, I mean, I guess it's a good place for you. But for someone like yourself who wants to go do different things and go do the country's work, I guess a good way to say it.
Yeah.
It's definitely not a place for you.
Well, clinics are good because what they used to do in Vietnam, even they would send corpsmen to like field med and then like a major hospital, so like the ERs and the ICUs, to be trained up in their clinical knowledge. Because 6 months isn't long enough to learn all your clinical knowledge from start to finish, with our training.
Right.
So they used to send them to hospitals like Jacksonville, even Norfolk, even out in San Diego, and then they'd push them to a Marine unit and send them to Vietnam. So they spent a year doing that first. So it could be good. It depends on your command, really. I mean, I learned a lot of sick hall knowledge and physicals and things of that sort prior to going to my Marine unit, but it all depends. Plus, it gives you a chance to be with corpsmen that are on their shore rotation that may have been with a ship, may have been on a sub, may have been with the Marines, the different platforms with the Marines. It could have been with the squadron. So it gives you a chance to kind of find out what you may be interested to go do.
Right. That's a good point, I guess. And I guess it's, even though it's boring, it's kind of a place to relax too, because it's not, a very demanding.
Yeah, it's like a nice ease into the military.
Right.
Plus, I mean, it's a good opportunity to learn sick hall because you're not just tossed into a ward. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you can learn some of your clinical knowledge, but it all depends on how the clinics ran. And each place is different. But potentially it could be good.
Right. But yeah, that's where, like I said earlier on in this podcast, that's where we met. You were my sponsor, which is pretty much you helped me get settled into the new command, things like that.
Yeah.
And then we ended up. So again, I checked in April of 2016, and then we ended up actually leaving on the same day together earlier this year, because I complained to my detailer and she got me out of there early, thank God.
Yep. And then you're at your ship now.
Yeah. And
I'm back here in Lejeune again.
Back in the Marines.
Oh yeah.
I give you a lot of props, man. Like I said, I mean, we always coke and joke and all that, especially at work.
Yeah.
But definitely an inspiration. I'm gonna say that. You're a badass dude. Did a lot of badass shit for this country.
Just doing things.
And it's definitely I don't know. I mean, I'm in it, so I get it. I just feel like not a lot of people get recognition, and obviously you don't do it for recognition, but it's just I wanted, I don't know. I want to use this podcast too, because I talked to you a little bit about Harper before.
Yeah.
But I definitely wanted to. It's something that means a lot to me to put on, to document, essentially, for lack of better words.
Yeah.
So this is, unless the internet melts, which probably will never happen. This story will be on it forever, and hopefully that means a lot to you. And hopefully your fellow Marines, to kind of have Harper live on in some fashion.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it wasn't just me out there either. I mean, I had the other corpsman with me too, so
Right.
we made a good little duo. Shane Peterman, he's out now, but he's a pretty badass dude too.
Well, I appreciate you obviously taking. I mean, we're an hour and 52 minutes in, almost 2 hours.
Dang.
Into this conversation, so I appreciate your time. I appreciate you honestly sharing. What I mean, I know a lot of guys don't like to share, kind of like you said, and I appreciate you for going as deep as you did.
Yeah.
And kind of just sharing the story, because I think it's important. So I appreciate you for helping me out. And again, taking your time out to have this conversation with me. But yeah, man. Obviously, we're staying in touch with each other. I'm gonna try to come down and see you in a couple weeks here. Obviously, we're still pretty close to each other, about 3-4 hours away.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. I just want to say thank you, and I'm gonna get this uploaded on the internet, and get your story out there. I think it's important. So.
Well, hey, thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service. You've done a lot more than me. So just thank you, man. Thank you for everything. Thank you for, honestly, thank you for what you did over there. That was before I was even in. 2010 or 11, I was fist pumping in Jersey on my turntables while you were getting shot at. So that's something I didn't think about back then.
Yeah, I was in the same boat, same kind of thing. Like, I didn't think about it. Those dudes in Iraq doing that same kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just not something that's really in your forefront of anybody's mind, really, unless you're part of it, or if you're affected by it. But that's just human nature.
Yeah, but that's something I kind of want to. I mean, obviously, right now things aren't that bad over there, but there's a lot of, kind of like I said before, there's a lot of history and a lot of stories from Iraq and Afghanistan that are not necessarily out there. I mean, obviously the big ones are, or not the big ones, but the Dakota Meyers and the Michael Murphys and things like that. But there's a lot more than just that, and that's my mission, is to kind of get that out there. So thank you again, man. I appreciate it.
No problem.
And go play some PUBG.
All right, bye-bye.
Later, buddy.